guys, it's Alice, and today we're doing another one of those recommendation videos where I recommend a book to you based on a book you may have already read. I'll link to the first video that I did that was like this in the description, but yeah, we're just gonna get straight into this. The first book that I've picked out is Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. This is a post-apocalyptic novel where we follow a group of survivors who sort of travel around as a theater group and they perform Shakespeare for other people who are also survivors. We follow them as well as sort of take a look at what happened when civilization fell. This is one of my favorite books ever. If you haven't read it yet, somehow I would really recommend it. It's such a good book. If you have read this though and you liked it, I think you might also like Severance by Ling Ma. This is also a post-apocalyptic novel, and we meet this woman who is one of the last people left to leave New York after a virus has killed almost everyone. She realizes she can't stay there forever though, and she can't be alone forever, so she finds this other group of people and she joins them, and they travel to this other place that they think might be safer. What these books have in common is the obvious end of world thing, but both also follow groups of people, and we get to see all of these different perspectives and ideas and reactions to what has happened, and I feel like that is the most interesting thing in books like these. Secondly, we have got some nonfiction, and you may have read Educated by Tara Westover. I feel like this book was everywhere last year and so many people read it and liked it. The story is about the author who grew up to a survivalist family in the mountains of Idaho, and she never went to school, she never saw a doctor, she didn't even have a birth certificate. And it's just about her upbringing and her coming of age and eventually wanting to go to school and educating herself. It's a really captivating and interesting book, and if you liked it, you may also like In the Days of Rain by Rebecca Stott. This is also a memoir, but it's set in England, and it's about the author who basically grew up in this religious cult. And the story is about her and her father and the complicated family relationships and just grappling with your family and how you grew up. And I feel like that's what both of these have in common. They deal a lot with how to deal with your family after something like this, and both are very reflective and just very interesting. Then we've got some more fiction. One of my favorite books that I read last year was Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. This is historical fiction. It's set in North Carolina in the 60s, and we meet this young girl who lives out in the marsh all by herself. And the story is just about her coming of age and how she's considered this wild child in the nearest town. And this is such a beautiful book. It's very atmospheric, and I love all of the scenery in this. If you've read and liked this, you may also like Sometimes a River Song by Avril Joy. I love this book. It's really underrated. It's historical fiction. It's set in the 30s in Arkansas, and we follow this girl who grows up in a riverboat community, and she dreams of learning how to read. And I just love this book. I feel like both of these books have a coming of age story. It's about young girls, and both are very atmospheric, and the setting is really interesting. This, I will say, is written in dialect, so it can be a little bit difficult to get into, but when you get into it, it's such an atmospheric and amazing story. Next, we have got some Japanese books. You may have read Strange Weather in Tokyo by Hiroomi Kawakami. This is contemporary fiction. It's set in Tokyo, and it's about this woman in her 30s who feels kind of lost, but then one day she runs into her old high school teacher, and they strike up an unlikely friendship. This is also one of my favorite books, and if you've read it, you may also like Sweet Bean Paste by Dorian Sukagawa. This is also set in Japan, and it's about this man who again feels very lost and doesn't really know what he's doing with his life. He is working in this dorayaki shop, and he makes them all day, and that's all he really does, and he's very miserable. But then one day, this older lady comes into the shop, and this changes everything. Both of these books are obviously set in Japan, both of them are about unlikely friendships, and both of them have like a weird amount of food in them. Like there's a lot of food writing in both of these that I really like. These are some of my favorite books ever, and they're like my go-to recommendations when it comes to books from Japan. Lastly, we have got some short stories, and you may have read The Thing Around Your Neck by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. This is obviously short stories, like I said, and they deal with the clashing of cultures and sort of the grapple of trying to reconcile them, which sounds vague, but if you've read anything by Adichie, you will know that she is an excellent writer, and I especially love the characters that she creates. If you liked this though, you may also like What It Means When a Man Falls from the Sky by Leslie Neka Arima. This is also short stories, of course, and it deals a lot with family and the relationships within families and the idea of home. And I feel like that's something that these have in common. They deal a lot with belonging and culture clashing, and both have stories set at least in part in Africa, and they're just some of my favorite short story collections. Like, I love these ones. Okay guys, those were all the books that I had to show you today. I'd love to know if you've read any of these books, or if you want to, or if you can think of any like book pairings that you feel like go well together, and I will see you soon. Bye!